Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming. As the people are coming into the room, please feel free to help yourself to lunch. There's plenty of food there, so please feel free to go get seconds if you'd like. So thank you for coming. I'm Camille Kalatasti, Dean for Institutional Assessment and Graduate Studies. This event is a series of sessions we host to share information with the Berklee Boston campus and with our partner schools, the Valencia campus, Boston Conservatory, as well as members of the Berklee International Network. Our goal in this session is to share information about the Berklee curriculum, Berklee pedagogy, our general philosophy towards key subjects that are very important for our students. This event is being live streamed, and it is also available afterwards on as a recording on berklee.edu academic affairs website. If you have any questions about anything following the session, please feel free to reach out to partners@berklee.edu, and we're happy to answer your questions. Many people have been working hard to get all of the technology together and to get this event organized. So special thanks to Mary McClory, Ray Soul, David Hughes, Reggie Lofton, and all of the production team. Please join me in giving them a round of applause. We'll get started in just a second, and our goal is always to finish by 10 minutes before the hour so that people who have a class on the hour can head out. Today's session focuses on ear training, which is one of the core music subjects at Berklee College of Music, and which Berklee has a very unique approach to. And so here to present on ear training is really what we might call the father of ear training here on campus, Allan Chase, who is the chair of the ear training department. So please join me in welcoming Allan.
Thanks very much, Camille, and thank you everybody for being here in person and virtually. I'm really happy to have this opportunity to share some information about our ear training program and how we teach and what I've learned from our great faculty here about effective teaching methods. So I'm going to try to move quickly through a bunch of topics here and illustrate some of them with demonstrations, and I'm going to be joined by a faculty member later to do that. So first of all, I just wanted to say what our mission is. Sometimes our students think ear training is a required course that they just have to get through and then they'll be done with ear training. And as musicians, we all know that ear training is a lifelong pursuit. It's increasingly interesting and inspiring. The better you get at it, the more you can do with it, but also there's always more to learn. And so these are my words just to summarize our mission. Basically, we're trying to give students tools for creative and expressive music making by connecting their inner hearing and oral recognition, which are things the brain does with sound, and with notation, with their voice, and with their instrument. And to connect all of those to one another. So it's not just A-B kind of connection, but sort of a sphere of connections. Connecting notation to your inner hearing. Connecting your voice to notation, being able to read music, connecting your oral recognition to notation. You hear something and you can write it down. You imagine a sound and then you play it on your instrument, or you read a sound and you can imagine what it's going to sound like when you play it on your instrument or sing it, and so on. So all of those things are connected with one another. So it's actually a pretty complex task. The brain is doing a lot of interesting things, and they are things that for many of our students, those connections need to be built from the ground up. Some come with a lot of connections, but many with uneven strengths in those areas. Some very strong connections and others that need a lot of work. Just to give you an overview of our course sequence, and most of you know this, we have 4 semesters of required ear training. Each course is made up of 3 one-hour class meetings per week for 15 weeks, 12 in the summer. Some of our students, actually more than half of our students in Boston, come to us with advanced placement. And advanced placement is based on their preparation, what they already know, but it's also based on on a kind of complex of skills that we test for that suggests that they have the ability to learn more than one semester's material in their first semester. So we place a lot of students into entering ear training 2, for example, and they learn all the material in ear training 1 and 2 in their first semester. And we're not testing that they already know all of ear training 1. We're testing that they know enough that they can move quickly through 1 and into 2. These statements here are approximate, but this is about the course content. We give, let's say, plenty of attention. I don't know if it's exactly equal, but roughly equal attention to melody, harmony, and rhythm. Of course, melody includes rhythm, and harmony includes melody through counterpoint, so these things overlap. And we give roughly equal attention to singing and dictation and recognition activities. Maybe a little more time spent on singing, but we try to strive for a balance of these things. And when we talk about dictation or recognition, we're talking about rhythmic, melodic, and harmonic. It's a lot to keep in your mind as a teacher to keep all these things in the air and to use class time to cover them all. And they reflect roughly the same content as the workbook chapters and the lessons on the syllabus. So if we're working on rhythmic dictation, it's about close to the rhythmic content of the singing examples in the workbook for that lesson and chapter, for example. And the singing that we do in classes and as homework includes prepared singing, but also learning how to sight sing, how to take music that you've never seen before and figure it out quickly, even instantly. And that includes rhythms and melodies. And we do some singing of duets and chorales and other things. I think when you think about all these elements of the course, the prepared singing material in the workbook might be 30 or 40% of the class. And that might not be intuitive to teachers at other schools until you've sort of seen how we do it here, because it's the book for the course. It's the only published material that we provide on paper for the course. So you might think, well, this is the course. But in fact, it's only a portion of the course because you have to come up with real music examples from the world of actual pieces of music and composed for the specific purpose of dictation examples of melody, harmony, and rhythm. And then there's sight singing, which if they have the book, it's not really sight singing unless, it's good for practicing sight singing, but it's not good for testing sight singing. In terms of testing, grading, homework, and class time, those include all the elements of the course. We have individual singing of prepared rhythms, melodies, and exercises in a test, for example, and in classroom activity. We have sight singing of melodies and rhythms and instruction in how to sight sing, which I'll come to in a minute. And then we have rhythmic, melodic, and harmonic dictation as homework, as tests, as graded activities, and as things that are covered in class. It's really important, this is something I really want to emphasize to our BIN school partners and to our own faculty and to myself, and that is that completing each course is essential. You can always say, oh, they're just not good enough at chapter 5. I want to stop and stay here until everybody gets it down. But it's important to balance that with the need to complete the course. And the reason is that the material at the end of each course is really a prerequisite for the student to be successful in the next course. If you don't cover all the 16th note syncopations in ear training 1, then ear training 2 is going to be very hard for students, and they may not succeed no matter how diligent they are. And if you don't cover all 5 keys in ear training 1, which gives you experience with the tonic on every line and space of the staff in either bass or treble clef, which is very important visually for students, then I'll come back to that as well, then you are setting them up for a lot of difficulty in that last key that they didn't get to in the next semester. So every course leads to the next, and it's really important for transfer students and even for continuing students, of course, on the same campus to finish one thing before they go on to the other. Even if it's exposure, it'll kind of grow in their minds, we hope, and if they don't master it, at least you've exposed them to that material as best you can in the time you have. The basic techniques we use in all the courses, and this is a short list, but it's really really important and even controversial. And I'll just address some of those things a little bit. And later I'm going to give my email address, and you'll have resources to revisit this material, and I can send you more material, anyone who's interested. So bear in mind that if I go too quickly over some of these issues, a lot of people will have questions about movable do, for example, at other schools. And I'd be happy to spend as much time as you'd like following up. So the first thing we do is when we sing pitches in ear training at Berklee, we sing them with movable do solfege. Those are the chromatic syllables. There's 17 common syllables. Basically, you could think of them as if you were in the key of C, there's the 7 white keys, and then 2 names for each of the black keys. If you think in terms of a keyboard, that's why there are 17 sharps and flats. And we use do-based minor. Some movable do systems, like the Kodai system, use la-based minor with the relative minor emphasized. We use a parallel kind of system where do is always the tonic of the moment. Whatever sounds like the tonic we call it do, including modulating music and so on. Conducting. We ask students to conduct with the right hand when singing in time. And the question comes up, why the right hand? I'm left-handed. I'd rather conduct with my left hand. Really, conducting is advantageous to left-handed people because all the hard stuff in conducting is done with the left hand. So the unfairness works the other way. It's just that in ear training, we're only doing the beat pattern, but later all of our students take required conducting courses, and those are very challenging for the left hand. So it's better, especially for left-handed people, to learn the beat with the right hand. We just do these simple patterns, and they have the advantage, like solfege, of telling you where you are. Solfege tells you where you are in scale degrees relative to the tonic. It's iterating and reiterating, naming where am I in the key. It's like movable do solfege is just like numbers. And conducting pattern is better than snapping your fingers, in which 2 and 4 sound exactly the same and look exactly and feel the same, or tapping your foot where 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all the same. In conducting, each beat has a specific unique location. Downbeat is always coincides with a bar line. Over, out, up, have their own specific meanings. And so there's a system of Indian music counting with fingers, which achieves the same thing. But because people are going to learn conducting, we do it with the conducting pattern, small pattern with the right hand for ear training. And it helps people, once it becomes automatic, it helps people make fewer mistakes and catch their mistakes if they're off. And until it's automatic, it's hard. But when it becomes automatic, it's easy. And that's not very hard to do. Last thing is a suggestion that I've learned from our faculty. Not everyone does this, and we don't mandate it, but it's common to sing rhythms on a pitch. And I didn't know this until I started teaching ear training, but I realized pretty quickly that if you go ta, 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 it's kind of hard to sustain ta. When you're thinking like in terms of using your spoken word kind of mindset for your voice, it feels very strange to hold out a note for, say, 6 beats at a moderate tempo. Where if you're singing do, 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 it's somehow more natural to get the durations correct. So I recommend, if you don't do that, try doing rhythms on a pitch as a teaching technique. And I'll get to some more demonstration stuff soon, but I want to just cover a few more of these kind of key concepts and points of our program. Inner hearing is really the most important thing that we're working on developing. English language doesn't have good words for this. We keep reverting to visual metaphors for oral hearing type of things. So music education and cognition researchers have come up with the term audiation, which is just like imagination for images, audiation for sounds. It's like having the oral image, of a sound in your head. you hear it in your head. And this is a skill that is, for many people, including musicians, it's a little slow and rusty when they begin studying ear training, and we can really speed up the kind of the neurological, the connections of the brain that make this work. So it's basically building up long-term memory of pitch relationships. And now we're not assuming students have perfect pitch. They don't have to know the exact frequency of a note the first time they hear it. We're building up the memory of relationships, ratios between frequencies. So if this is 1, then what is 5? That kind of thing. If this is do, what is sol? That's movable do is a way of naming those scale degree relationships. And this inner hearing that we're working on is learning the relationships. What does a major third above the tonic sound like? What does a perfect fifth sound like? And we use that inner hearing to guide our singing, so it tells our voice what to do in the key that we're in. You use it when you're a player. It's extremely important on instruments that have kind of, let's say, where things can go wrong in the pitch production, like brass instruments or strings without frets. If you have to reach for this note and you want to really know what it's about to sound like before you play it, and that's really true for all instruments. It's important for improvisation and any aspect of playing an instrument. So inner hearing guides you. Like say you're reading notation and you're playing an A and the next note is an E. Your inner hearing is what tells you what that next note is going to sound like in relation to the notation. And recognize of sounds. Pardon the typo, I edited this at the last minute. It should say recognition of sounds there. So I'll fix that. And so inner hearing helps us recognize sounds. We hear something and it matches something in our long-term pitch memory, pitch relationship memory, which is our inner hearing. Okay, to build that, we have to make students use it. And I'm going to share with you some mistakes that teachers make all the time that don't do this. And I have some don'ts to suggest here to teachers and self-teachers, students who are learning themselves. So you want to use your inner hearing and work it all the time in order to get good at it and to build the strength of it. We have in our brains, we have a short-term working memory. If we got a room full of 4-year-olds and you sang them something, they could sing it back, right? It's a kind of function we have that has to do with how we learn language, and maybe it's partially hardwired into the human brain, this ability to kind of echo something you just heard, especially if it's short, if it's like, say, 7 notes or something like that, or 3 or 4, less than a certain number. So it's very tempting when you want the students in a class or you want yourself to get something right to use this short-term memory function of your brain. In other words, you can't figure out, what a particular interval sounds like. I'll go to the piano here and demonstrate this for a second. So we'll assume we don't have perfect pitch, and we need, this is A, and that'll be our tonic for the moment. And suppose you can't figure out what the F above this note sounds like, and you try and you sing da 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 da. No, those aren't right, and then you play it for yourself, and then you can sing da da very easily because it's in your working memory, right? What I'm suggesting is don't do that. It's like showing the student the answer. Instead, in a visual thing, it's the oral equivalent of showing the student the answer. It's to find, do. So we use anchors. We use things we know. We may have to go up the scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. To find that note, we have to work to find it. And then we have to reinforce that sound, that relationship, and learn it. So that's what I mean by making the students use their inner hearing. Rather than giving them answers and sort of using the short-term working memory. I've had a number of people where we've asked people to do a teaching demonstration, and this is a very common thing when people are learning to teach ear training. I know I did it myself a lot before I figured out that it didn't work. And that is, you want the students to sing what you're teaching them right, so you feed it to them. And that's just not going to help them in the long run because it's using a different part of their brain, and the two things are somewhat separate and don't automatically connect with each other. So they'd say, well, if you could play it for me, I could sing it. But no, you need them to learn how to sing it themselves. So, for example, somebody might be, as I'm just doing here, introducing the natural minor scale. And the first thing they might do is go, well, the natural minor scale has a minor third. Sing that for me. Okay, already you've given them the answer. They're not learning to find the minor third. They're just echoing it like small children can. And it's not really a new skill for them. So a better thing to do would be sing me something you know, say a major third. Okay, it's a half step lower than that. Let's try for it. Can you think in your head, can you hear a minor's third? Sing it. If it's wrong, figure out how it's wrong and help them learn how to correct it. That'll make students much more self-reliant and much more developed in their inner hearing. So we'll talk about a few ways to do that. One of the ways to do it is, well, as I just said, don't feed the students the notes from the piano before they've sung them. Show them how to find the notes. And that would be to use things they know to find things they don't know. We're going to start in ear training with the major scale, the most common and easiest thing for most people to learn, and then build from that. This also comes up in group singing. When you're singing examples from the book, you'll often notice that in a group that the teacher, who is the best at doing it, or certain strong-sounding vocalists in the class or confident students will sing loudly, and the other people, it's almost an imperceptible time difference, but they'll be like a microsecond behind, just lagging and catching the notes, following the leader. And this is extremely obvious if you tell those strong singers to stop, which, you know, I'm not a big fan of anything that it could be perceived as shaming or creating a hierarchy in the classroom, but sometimes a way to do that is just break people into groups. Okay, front row, stop, second row, sing this. You know, you can, without saying you're better than you, you can devise little techniques in the classroom that make you really hear what the other people can do and not always following the one or two strongest people. And then just rely on the student's inner hearing whenever possible. Say you finish an example in C major and the next one is an F. Instead of giving them an F, have them sing the C major scale up to an F and get their own F so that they learn how they can always find the notes. If somebody makes a mistake, instead of playing the right note for them, it's very tempting. And again, I've done it and I've learned not to do it painfully. Make them correct their own mistakes. You can say that was not right. How was it wrong? How do we find the answer? How do we get it right? What happened there? There are many ways to do that. I'm going to ask Darcel to join me. This is our faculty member, Professor Darcel Wilson, who kindly, on extremely short notice, agreed to come up and join me. And so we're going to use something that's in our books, which is solfa exercises, just the syllables written out as a text like this. And when I first saw these weren't in the books back in the 80s. When I first started teaching ear training, they were added in later incarnation. And it's a common thing that's used in, it's been used in England for a couple hundred years as a way of a kind of notation through movable do solfege. And I saw some people doing a technique with this where they put a pause between each note. So instead of singing these as like 7-note melodies, right, you're going to pause there. And you have a task to do in the pause. And the task is to imagine the next note, to audiate or inner hear the next note. And you really have to be on the honor system that you're doing that and not following or waiting for someone else to sing. I'm going to just use the piano to give the notes, and we're just going to demonstrate that so you don't have to just listen to me singing. So let's try. I'll take my. Oh. Sorry. I'll use this one. That's okay. We're fine. No problem. So we'll do this together like we were students. So we need a do. Let's use A, and we'll do it in our own octaves. And we'll do it slowly so we can really be conscious of hearing the next note. So we might put a metronome on to keep people together. And when we get to the slash in the middle there, that's going to be, let's say, 4 beats pause. So we're going to put 1 beat in between each 2 notes and 4 where the slash is, okay? Just to regroup and breathe. So, here we go. 2, ready, go. Do, rest. May, rest. Re, sol, lay, te, do. 3, 4. Re, do, ti, la, sol, fa, sol. So I didn't really look at this one before, and it's an important thing if you're teaching these to kind of have a sense of which octave and which direction to go sometimes when there's a leap. So I actually went a little low for my voice. So anyway, thank you, Darcel. That just, I don't think we have to illustrate that anymore. You can hear that she's more in tune than me on lay there. Darcel is an amazing singer, and we could review that. And so it's a very exposed way of singing, but it really makes you hear each note. And if you're teaching, you can hear the clusters when they're wrong, and you can hear the relatively close unisons when they're good, and sometimes, a great in-tune unison. Another technique that's really valuable for all of our teaching is this idea of tendency tones. And this is one I really want to emphasize. If you can just stay up here, Darcel, and we might do some of these together. Can you just play me a C there, just for everybody? So we'll do these in C first. So basically, this is the idea. It's an idea from music theory and harmony teaching, that the notes of the tonic triad are the primary kind of home notes by definition, and the other notes in a scale, including the chromatic scale, have varying degrees of tendency to resolve to those notes. All other things being equal. Of course, in harmonic progressions, other things, local things can happen, but over time, there's a basic tendency for the notes to resolve to the notes of one chord. So let's just sing through these. If everybody could do that, that'd be great. So here's do, okay. Can I hear a do from everybody who was willing to participate? Do, okay. So I'm going to use my cursor to point to these. I hope you can see it. So ti, do, re, do, fa, mi, la, sol, and then sol, do, and I just wrote out mi, re, do to compare it, to get us into minor, which is me, re, do. Now, if you take all these notes together, here's a point that I like to make to students that I sometimes blows their mind a little bit, is that this is what harmony is based on. This is what harmonic function is based on. Harmony, we think of chords as some kind of separate thing sometimes from individual voices, but the chords are just the results of a bunch of voices moving together, and the function of a dominant chord is it wants to resolve, or it tends to resolve in tonal music the way we've learned it in Western music, because Ti, Re, Fa, and Sol, which make up a dominant 7th chord, all have a tendency to resolve to notes of the 1 chord, right? So in a way, it's just another way of saying the same thing, that harmonic function and the function of the voices in harmonic voice leading is like the function of tendency tones and melodies. So here's why this is helpful. This is something to memorize and practice, but it really helps when you're leaping among notes to remember that they're near something you know well and are confident in. So once your students have confidence with do, mi, sol, mi, do, they can hear ti, re, fa, mi, they can leap among notes that aren't in the one chord and resolve the last one by step, or even not resolve it. When you get good at these, you can actually use them to kind of fake atonal melodies by hearing, tonality in your head. So in the minor key, can you just give us a C again, and we'll do these again? Do. So me, re, do, that we're in the minor key. Let's sing these. Fa. Don't rely on Darcel and our other faculty. Ra, do. So flat 2 is called Ra, and do, sol. So we're going to get Fi from sol because it's next to sol. Okay. I'm not going to go over the secondary dominant ones, but in the context of secondary dominance, some of the sharp notes like D, Re, and C kind of act like secondary leading tones. They want to go up to the tonic of their expected resolution, so that's a little bit more complicated, and I can send you this. You can tell these slides look better because I got some help from the folks, Mike and others putting on this event. So thanks for these nice looking slides. The principle here is that tones that are not members of the tonic triad tend to resolve by step to the nearest note of the tonic triad. And when there's 2 equal options of a whole step, they tend to go down or more to do than to the third. And sol do has 2 functions. It's part of the tonic triad, and it also resolves to the tonic, which we hear a lot in bass lines and so on. And I think these, from my studies of ethnomusicology and so on, I think that where these probably come from, there's some acoustic basis for them in the overtone series, but it also has a lot to do with the things we're exposed to in the kind of childhood songs almost always resolve these tendency tones. The kind of public sing-along music like national anthems and hymns and things that folk songs that large groups of people sing, they often have these direct resolutions of tendency tones. And more complex music that you have to kind of learn and struggle with, that's partly because the tendency tones don't resolve as expected, indirectly or not at all. And so that can kind of help you analyze what's happening in melody. But you can always use that technique to grab notes. If you want to hear a note in your head, the fact that it's next to a note you know is helpful. And so tendency tones are really helpful in building inner hearing. Recognition of those patterns can really help you kind of grab the notes. And thinking this way in terms of about tonality and modality is very helpful as an artist, if you're a composer, songwriter, arranger, or improviser, making up melodies. It helps you understand what tones tend to do and how to make more interesting choices and how to create both ambiguous and deceptive things as well as very simple and normal, satisfying kinds of things. So I'm going to skip ahead here. Another thing we use a lot in classes, and people do them lots of different ways, is solfege ladders, is a vertical illustration of the notes of the solfege system. You might just do the ones from the major or minor scale if you're working on a particular scale. And then later you might use one with all the chromatic notes. I'll show you a couple versions of it that I made. And basically you give the class a do, you point to notes, and the class sings. So you're making them do what they did with the written solfa, but in a little more flexible improvisational way where you can challenge them and speed up and slow down and so on. I find it really helpful to do this, cross-reference the scale, on staves in 2 clefs. So when I'm using a solfege ladder, which I'll show you in a minute, I will write the notes of the scale we're working on a staff in a particular key. So the solfege ladder has no key. It's just about relationships. But the scale on a staff is specific pitches and specific octaves and so on. And the reason is to make the students, again, build those connections between scale degree and what does it look like in this particular key in bass clef. We're really, in choreo training, except for solfege 1 and 2, we do not use the C clefs. In solfege 1 and 2 in the second year, those classes use the alto and tenor clef a lot. So you can do things like explore the scale, do the tendency tone things, triad arpeggios of familiar progressions. You can do familiar melodies, and you can make up melodies. Students, you can do a lot of fun things with a solfege ladder. So here's an example of an octave of 1. So let's do this in A flat, Darcel. So here's Do. So I'm going to just point, and I want you to sing. We'll stick with the major scale first. So Do.
Re, mi, fa, mi, re, do, sol, mi, fa, re, mi, do.
Now I would usually have a little bit bigger one up here that has a few notes below Do, like Sol up to Do, and a few notes above the high Do. So I have about a 13th of a range, and that allows you to do most melodies. So we could do all kinds of things. We could have 2 students come up here, and one half of the class follows this one, and the other half of the class follows the other one, and they can make some really horrendous random counterpoint, or try to resolve, try to improvise a major or minor melody together. And you can talk about, it could be fun and probably a laugh or two, but also gives you the opportunity to analyze what happened. Actually, let's try that. Why not? This presentation needs a little humor. Can you come up and do this with me? You be my other pointer. So I'm going to ask people on this side, and if you're doing this at home, pick anyone to follow. And people on this side follow Darcel. People on this side follow me. Okay. So this is Do. So we're going to go like 1, 2, 3, 4. About this tempo. 3, 4. Do, mi, re, fa, ti, do. I'm not hearing the Darcel people. You need to sing. Yeah, you sing too. Yeah. So we'll do a random. We'll see if I can handle this. Do, mi, fa, re, mi, do, ti, la, sol, do, re, ti, do. Okay, that wasn't too bad. We had one half step that was kind of sweet and bittersweet. Anyway. Other things might happen if you have your students do that, but that's cool, And another technique we'll do is note chasing, and this is really valuable as a prelude to melodic dictation, to get people warmed up to do melodic dictation. In this case, you're hearing the piano, or it could be the teacher singing without solfege or playing another instrument. Usually you set a tempo to keep it moving. Teacher will give me a Do. So there's Do. And we could do it sort of like Kay was doing it, one of our teachers in a demonstration the other day, 1 note at a time. So I want you to sing the note she played about this fast. 1, 2, 3, 4. So sing, re, do, ti, do, mi, sol, fa, mi. Okay, you get the idea. So you can do that with any level of difficulty. And you can also do it with 3-note groups like do, re, da, 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 da. Yeah, so you're trading short figures, usually not more than 7 notes, probably in the 1, 2, 3, 4 area. And this gets students' minds working very quickly on note recognition, and then if you move to dictation from that, they will be able to do dictation. if they can spell those notes on the staff and write the rhythms, which is another subject we're going to come up to here. So this is the nickname we give this around the ear training department at Berklee is note chasing. It's a way to get familiar with the material of a scale. And you can gauge the difficulty by exactly what the students can do. You don't want to leave them all in the dust, and you don't want to bore them, so you find the level that's challenging where they're getting it right, 90% of the time, but there are mistakes cropping up here and there. And that's kind of like the sweet spot for learning, because you're pushing them and they're going, why did I get that wrong? And if it doesn't sound like people are getting it, repeat it maybe 3 or 4 times. If it's really still not right, maybe stop the tempo and say, okay, let's take that apart. Sing up the scale. What was that note? It was la. Okay, I never get la. Okay, now we know we need to practice la, which we probably do. The last note people learn for some reason in the major scale. So when you get to rhythm, there's a similar kind of method. I guess it's sort of similar to what these other methods, and that is that we want to teach people how to count rhythms and decipher them, but in real time, that's too slow for most reading. You can't always be looking at every quarter note and going, that's equal to 4/16. It's, one E and tied together. And, you can't think all these things. You have to build up a repertoire of instantly familiar, visible signs that you know what they sound like. And so this is something my colleague Roberta Radley, assistant chair, made up. And it shows the 8 most common 2-beat rhythms that involve nothing shorter than an 8th note, right? So these are like the basic 8 things you're going to see, 9 counting the rest, but I'll just say 8 because any of these notes could be replaced by a rest later. Okay, and if students can learn these 8 things and then make them half as long, so do them in have all the note values, so it's quarter, 2/8, 4/16, 8ths, 2/16, etc. 1/2 of what these note values are, so they're equal to 1 quarter note. You have 8 of those and 8 of these, and that pretty much makes up the rhythmic material of duple meter. Then we'll add triplets and groupings in tuplets and things later. But that's like, that's how people can sight read on a gig, is that they can decipher rhythms instantaneously because they've memorized ways of grouping them. It's a big subject, but this is an introduction to it. And if you think of them as words, just like we don't sound out, the first time a kid reads cat and hat, they sound them out maybe, but pretty soon they know what those words are, and they don't have to think about the individual letters. They see them as a group, and that's what this rhythm, that's what I mean by words. A couple more quick points, really just one more, is that one thing we've been doing over the last 8 or 9 years a little bit more in our department is finding ways to use technology for fun and educational projects that students can do at home. And one of those is to use it's very easy to learn to overdub vocal recordings on your computer. You can very quickly and easily do it with GarageBand or Audacity, which is a free program that you can download, and export an MP3 and send it to your teacher of a short example. So some of the things we might ask students to do at home and record are rhythm and melodic or harmonic duets that are in the book, or that they find elsewhere, or that you give them or write for them. Chorales, like a 4-part harmony example from the book, or they might write their own to illustrate different chord progressions, kind of tying their theory knowledge in with their singing. We usually don't worry about octaves on these. We just consider everything to be invertible counterpoint, and you can sing the top part down or the bottom part up, and there might be, it's not strict counterpoint where 4ths and 5ths are different. We just sing it in the comfortable register. And another thing students sometimes do is a call and response exercise where either with the student's instrument or keyboard. And I always emphasize, if you're going to do that, sing first and then play. I think I have just enough time to play you about a 1-minute example here, if I may, of something like that. This is an example by a former student, Aaron Bentledge, who is a wonderful singer who allowed me to use this example. from her homework into class, and it's she's going through the modes from Lydian to Ionian to Mixolydian to Dorian to Aeolian to Phrygian, with little melodic ideas over do-sol accompaniment. So it's just her voice, and something she did years ago. So just in A flat, sol, do. So she's
Mi, fi, sol, fi, la, sol, fi, mi, re, do.
This is a homework assignment that I gave a structure for, but she's making it up, the content.
Do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi, sol, la, sol, mi, re, do.
People always slide up to la.
Do, mi, sol, la, te, do, la, sol, fa, mi, re, te, do. Do, mi, sol, la, sol, te, la, fa, sol, mi,
So
sol,
now we're in Dorian,
la,
just
sol.
adding a flat with each phrase, playing the same thing she sang in real time.
Do, mi, do, fa, mi, sol, la, sol, fa, mi, re, mi, te, do.
And last is
Do, ra, do, mi, ra,
Phrygian.
do, re, te, do, la, sol, fa, mi, ra, do.
Okay, this goes on with mixed modes and so on after that. So that's just one example of the many things you can do with your computer. The benefits of that are that the student is going to play this for the class and maybe, or even just for you. And because they take some pride in it and feel some pressure to do it right, they may work on it for quite a while, practice it. I'm not worried about cheating in a case like this. I'm actually more interested in the fact that they're spending a lot of time working on it to get a good result. Obviously, you don't allow them to quantize things and use pitch correction and stuff like that. There's a bit of an honor system involved. Anyway, that's a quick overview of some things that I learned from our faculty, and our faculty here are amazing. I've observed them teaching, and pretty much all these things I got from them, and I thank them for that. Some of them are here, some of my most inspiring ones. Thank you, Darcel and Lydia and others who are here. Any questions for me in the last couple minutes? There's another way to ask me questions. It's my email. It has an S in it. It's not A. Chase. Don't write to A. Chase, a former student who gets a lot of my email, please. But do write to me. Be happy to answer any questions. Or maybe, Darcel, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I don't.
What did I forget? What's your favorite teaching technique that I didn't do?
Any games that that can be done.
Can you say it on the mic? Because some.
Sorry.
Maybe,
That's right.
yeah.
Sorry. I have a silly game that I play. It kind of puts the students on the spot, but we're all performers here, right? So
Mhm.
that's how I look at it, and I call it ear training ant. I I have them. Excuse me. It's a silly game, but it's important to hear what someone is doing incorrectly without making them feel bad and putting them on the spot like that, as it is for them to have it done correctly. But also, so we do that, and I put them in teams and have them kind of rate each other and get points that way.
Okay.
So it's not as bad as it sounds. It's actually quite fun for the students, and they get a lot out of it. Also on the solfa exercises, as you know, some singers might be more advanced in singing those, and some of the solfa exercises do repeat, like you might have sol, sol. So I'll encourage them to kind of sing down the octave.
Yeah.
And then try to do jumps like that.
Yeah, like I did accidentally.
As you continue, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Those are great suggestions. Yeah, I think diffusing the tension that exists in the room when you're doing ear training. Ear training is scary for a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people are either scared about their ability to read notation fluently, or their ability to sing, or both. And you'll have all sorts of different reasons in a class that people are scared. People used to call it ear straining and fear training, the two parts of, and you could kind of switch whether it was dictation was one or the other. For me, singing was fear training and dictation was ear straining, but for someone else it might be the opposite. Anyway, the more we can diffuse that and make it fun, I think people don't learn well when they're scared. Obviously, testing is a little bit high stakes at certain times with midterms and finals, but if we can have the process of an ear training class be fun, and that sounds like a great method, that you're basically lightening up the whole process of evaluation. Like, it could be better. We all know it. Let's just get over it and not feel judged, but just laugh about it, that we're trying to learn. It sounds like that. Any way you can do that in a classroom, I think, is generally good. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope this was helpful and interesting to some of you. Again, if you have questions for me at any time, please email me, aschase@berklee.edu. I'd be very happy to send you these materials, share anything we have, answer questions, etc.
Wonderful. Thank you all very much for coming, and special thanks to Allan and Darcel. Let's give them one more round of applause. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you.